Oftentimes, Zerg vs. Zerg can feel really, really confusing. Unlike other matchups, mirror matches don't give you an inherent advantage or weakness that you can exploit. In fact, one might say that rather than a Venn diagram of racial strengths and weaknesses, a mirror matchup secures a given race's advantages. I'll explain. Because this may at first seem like an abstract concept, let's talk specifics. A Terran racial advantage is its ability to control space. In Terran vs. Terran, historically, a little bit different today's meta, but historically, you often see long siege tank lines arrayed 1-2 screens away from the enemy, with Vikings overhead fighting an aerial war above for vision of the battlefield. Tanks, of course, shoot further than they see. Just a hair, but enough. So the Vikings serve as a spotter. In fact, that's what they're called. Who can control the air dictates who wins an otherwise unassailable position. Reason for this? Neither Terran wants to attack into the other. They have the same composition. It's all going to come down to who is sieged first and who has a better concave. If you attack into your enemy, you grant him both of those advantages. Zerg, we don't control space like Terran. However, we're not without our advantages because our workers, our army units, and our high-tech units all come from one source. That's Larva. This is a key advantage for many reasons, must always be thought of as a somewhat hidden resource. This is amplified by our previously mentioned law of mirrors. Per any given 45-second period, one hatchery produces 3 larvae. Pair a queen with that hatchery, and now you get 7 larvae in that exact same period. From 4 minutes on, using a pull into a hatchery build, each player should have at least 1 queen. This is 7 larvae between 4 minutes and 4:45, by which time a hatchery will have complete, adding a second or another starting larva, and it will spawn 1 larva in that 45-second interval. So in fact, from 4 to 4:45, you end up with 9 larvae. That's a huge swarm. That could be drones, that could be Zerglings, but that key little timing will flat out make or break your Zerg vs. Zerg games. And it's not actually a timing that they talk about that often, but it is pretty significant because the larva is really what's going to count in your Zerg vs. Zerg games. From 4 minutes on, you know, both players are going to be approximately 21 drones, and you get the second queen completing, and at this point decision making becomes so crucial. Like I said, do you make an army? Do you wing rush your opponent? Have you somehow added a roach warren early on and got enough gas to roachling attack your opponent? Or do you play defensive? Do you just make some drones, make just enough to stay alive, maybe a spine crawler, maybe some extra queens? Bunch of different options. But it's a decision that you have to make. You can't avoid making it. Now, how do you answer that? Like, because some of those situations, you know, if you just blindly do it, your opponent will have blindly countered it, and there's not much learning that can be done. So what you want to do is you want to scout at the same time. Find out what your opponent has made, and that's where your decision making is going to come in quite a bit. In accordance with the law of mirrors, though, let's get here before we go there. But in accordance with the law of mirrors, this great advantage that allows Zergs to gain a huge worker lead in any other matchup now haunts him by forcing his drone count to rise too quickly on pain of death. It's for this reason, the law of mirrors, that injects are that important. The easiest way to lose a Zerg vs. Zerg is to miss an inject, and this emphasis on mechanics is why many people have a harder time with this matchup. A hatchery isn't going to produce any natural larvae. It gets +3 per 45-second period. If there's already 3 or more larvae present at that hatchery, it's just not going to make any more until you use that 3. If you were at 0 and you have an inject pop off, it's not going to go past the 4. You have to make sure you are below 3 larvae at every hatchery. Stockpiling is very, very bad. Not only should you spend your larvae, But you need to make sure that your queens, every 45 seconds, are hitting their injects or their creep chambers. The law of mirrors influences many aspects of Zerg vs. Zerg. Take the first Overlord in ZVZ, for example. It's parked often as close to the natural mineral line as possible. Both scouting the hatchery, which, if he doesn't have one by a certain point in the game, you know it's a one base all in. And, in the case that they do build a hatchery, is the Ling all in with no drones rallied to that new base? You'll see the Larva expenditure. If you don't see drones there, build a defense. When in doubt, make an army. Even if you're wrong, you can always apply counter pressure to your opponent, because if he droned last round and you thought, you know, he was making roaches, and he droned but then left them in his main, they're not getting as good a mineral rate income as they could be if they were at the natural. So he's hurting himself in hiding those drones. And then you can hurt him even more just by using these army that you've already produced to just go force him to make an army. So not only does he have to make an army, but he's hurt himself in trying to psych you out. Great option. It's ironic that the same mechanism that encourages high drone count in other matchups, that is the ability to make more than one drone per hatchery per cycle, prevents it in mirror matchups. Because your opponent could flat out kill you if you make too many drones. Welcome to the law of mirrors.